Ask the Good Doctor. I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire on Sirius XM Urban View, Channel 126, where talk empowers and becomes action. I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire, and I am here to inform you about how to attain, maintain, and reclaim your perfect health. So please jump into this conversation with us on Ask the Good Doc on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook at Ask the Good Doctor. And please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Ask the Good Doctor LaJoyce Brookshire. So it's been a minute since we've come to you because we had to take some much needed time off, some rest, some relaxation, some recovery. Yes, some recovery. We are all completely COVID fatigued. Indeed, we are. I don't know about you, but it is a whole lot to gear up every time you get ready to go out of the house. And suit up is what I call it. It's like putting on the shield, the whole armor for COVID and the whole armor for God. You have to put that on too, okay? I am concerned right now as an educator, as the mother of a student a college freshman, and at large as a citizen and as a clinician about children returning back to school. So today we are going to answer your questions, and we're going to have two amazing guests who are going to come to us and shed some light on what it takes for children to come back to school in the midst of three pandemics. That's right. There are currently three pandemics running concurrently in our society today. And those, of course, are COVID, yes, mental health, absolutely, and racism. Oh, yes. Racism is officially a public health emergency. It has actually been declared as a public health issue by the CDC. And here, first of all, to help tackle this with us is Dr. Shai Butler, who has over 23 years of experience in higher education in both public and private higher education. And she currently serves as a vice president for student development and chief diversity officer at a college in upstate New York. She's been a contributor for higheredjobs.com for 2 years. And this is where I came to know who Dr. Shai Butler is. And she's also a speaker and a blogger who encourages individuals to learn about themselves, love themselves, and be themselves unapologetically. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Shai. How are you today? Thank you for being here.
I am very well, Dr. Brookshire, and thank you so much for inviting me. It is an honor and a privilege. I was able to go to your website and learn a little bit more about the work that you do, and I think you're fabulous, and I think you're doing God's work and much needed work during this time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. That is much appreciated. Dr. Shai wrote a brilliant article, and it is called The What of It All: Understanding Words and Meanings in Fighting the Nation's Pandemic of Racism. Woo! Now, that may sound like a mouthful, but let me tell you, I sat right down and took the time to read that because I wanted to digest every morsel. Dr. Shai, why did you think it was necessary to have a conversation to us who work in higher education about the what of racism?
Because I think the way you engage your customer base or your client base, and those of us who are in higher education, students are our customer base, is by understanding them and
Yes.
having the context of their experiences, their backgrounds, and their current issues or struggles or the place and space where they are. And for many students of color, particularly Black and Brown students, we are getting faced with a pandemic on both ends. We
Ah,
are experiencing the worst pandemic, I would say, certainly in a lifetime, certainly in multiple generations.
mhm.
Um, and then the pandemic of racism, which has been ongoing
Yes.
for centuries. And I think the two together have created a perfect storm.
Mm.
And I think if you even want to take it a step further and add what's going on in our nation's finances right now, where we're seeing financial impact from job loss, and the undereducation of our students, and how things are just really getting worse because of disparity in race and the issues around the pandemic, it, it just became clear that we needed to start a conversation within higher education. Others have, I'm not the first, but
Yes.
um, I wanted to bring it down to ground level.
Come
And,
on.
and I hope that that article really reflects that.
It really does. You start by defining a series of words. And, these are words that are tossed around like rag dolls, like, D&I and diversity and inclusion. Let's first talk about, and you are responsible for diversity. You're the chief diversity officer. It's really interesting to me that in 2020, we even need such a thing.
Oh, we do. We do. I mean, I would love to say, I describe myself as a pragmatic idealist. So I would love to say that we have gotten this thing of racism eradicated, and we now live in a society in which our division of finance can address racial disparities without having a chief diversity officer because it's so embedded in the strategic mission of the college and it's so embedded in strategic planning, and but that's not where we are right now. So there needs to be a chief diversity officer to be able to help coordinate efforts at the highest levels, because what we have usually had in higher education is we've always had, at least for decades, someone who's worked with the students directly as a director of multicultural affairs and other positions. But what we have lacked, and by the way, those individuals have done phenomenal jobs and continue to do so. What
Yes.
we have lacked is, as an industry, is someone at the seat of power helping to their colleagues unpack what is something that they really don't know very much about because
Mm,
those who are honest will speak from the lens of privilege and say, I have not needed to know before now.
yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but now I need to know and I need help. And so, with all humility, we can make great strides and advancement.
Oh,
In
we can indeed.
Mhm.
It is necessary for us to be included. And in this climate of COVID, it seems as if what has been magnified has been a racial issue. How are you able to suggest through higher education that it be quieted, that the minority students be comforted that they are accepted?
Well, what I encourage leaders to do uh, is to one, hit this straight on. Um,
Yes.
don't make excuses for what your institution has or hasn't been in the past. Own it. And then, in my holy book, um, it talks about there can be no forgiveness without repentance. So I think that if we understand this lens of repentance in its true form, that's not saying I'm sorry, or not just saying I'm sorry,
Mm.
but it's an action to really turn and change from our ways of doing business when doing business has caused harm. And
Yes.
I think if we can own the fact that harm has been done, um, intentionally in some areas and unintentionally in others, I believe it's both. Um, then we can get to a place of honest dialogue. And
Mhm.
once we begin honest dialogue, then we can start asking the real questions and listen to students when they say how harm has been done. When they talk specifically to what their needs are and how the institution can help them meet those needs. Um, but they won't even come to the table and believe that you are genuine about change if you can't first own the fact that there is a problem.
Yes. I want you to stay right here for a moment in the doing business causing harm. And in the business of education, it's supposed to be the place where we're coddled, where we're nurtured, where we get to be fine tuned. Yet it turns out that we're faced with a multiplicity of things that the complexities of complexion, should I say,
Mhm.
are front and center, and that then too becomes a part of our educational process.
Right. No, I agree. Um, I don't believe that there has been a manifestation of Horace Mann's famous statement of education being the great equalizer.
Yeah.
It has not been the great equalizer. We've seen that certainly in our K through 12 system, as well as in higher education. Um, I would say that what we're seeing, and it's not a secret, we've seen an increasing number of Black, Brown, and lower socioeconomic students entering into higher education, and that's great from providing educational access and opportunity, but they're not completing.
Mm.
And they're leaving many of our institutions with debt and no degree. So, how does that um, even perpetuate this notion of being a great equalizer? Because now we've left you worse off than when you came.
Yes.
So,
In addition to how you have destroyed the self-esteem all because of race.
absolutely. I mean, because one thing that I think we don't understand is that when you have a workforce, and higher education's workforce at the teaching levels as well as the administrative levels are predominantly white, and institutions are becoming increasingly predominantly Black and Brown. In many institutions, so certainly um, not all. And that's by intention. For some, I like to call it a mission and margin effect. So some really, some institutions, it is a part of their mission to diversify, and part of their value system. And for some, it's margin. It's
Yeah.
there are not enough white students to pay the bills.
Mm.
There's not enough white students who can write the checks to pay. So therefore, Black and Brown students come. They come with financial aid attached to them. They come with the ability to borrow attached to them, um, and
Mm.
so and this is the one thing I try to get our students to understand. Is that don't ever show up anywhere and let anyone make you feel lesser than,
Say
because
it.
you paid the cost to be here.
That's right.
And when I worked in public higher education, I worked with a socioeconomic group that were middle and upper class. So don't
Mhm.
think that middle and upper class people just look for the most expensive colleges in this country, because they don't.
No, they don't.
And those students had no problem telling me, "Look, lady, I pay your salary." And these were my early days of higher education, so I didn't always know how to respond. And so while I'm not encouraging Black and Brown students to go around saying, listen, people, I'll pay your salary, because that's just ill-mannered, what I do expect them to know is that they pay my salary. And while they
Yeah.
say it, they should know it. And therefore, they should not allow me or any professor make them feel that they don't belong there in the classroom. They belong there as much as someone who's sitting next to them who's full pay.
Say it.
And this is a truth that I try to help them understand, so that they can feel empowered and they can have a voice, and they don't go away saying, I didn't succeed here, I can't excel here, I'm not as smart as this person, I'm not as smart as that person. And part of structural racism in the academy has been, um, and individual racism, has been students of color primarily being made to feel that because they've come from lower funded K through 12 school systems around the nation, they're not prepared to be in our
Ha.
institutions of higher education. No, that is not the
Not
case,
the
and it's
case.
really not their fault. They are as prepared, and
Yes, they
what
are.
we need to do as we, the adults who are trained to teach, need to figure out how to teach this newer generation of students who've learned differently, and
Yes.
and it has absolutely no indication of what their ability is to succeed. So it's
Mhm.
onus is on us to learn how to teach them.
Oh, absolutely. And it is vitally important for us to be nurturers in that classroom.
Yes.
From day one, I set up an environment that lets you know that I'm hugging you without hugging you, that I let you know I care. I teach speech, I'm a speech professor. And
Mhm.
so while the textbook is filled with pedagogy lala, I teach speech for everyday use. And I tell my children, because you're black, brown, and yellow, that you need to be able to speak and pronounce your multisyllabic name clearly if ever your face is in concrete. And when I saw George Floyd with
Oh,
his face in concrete, screaming, what came back to my recollection is the statement I made to my students. If your face is ever
mm,
down in concrete,
mm.
you at least need to be able to speak your name clearly so
Yes.
that we know your name, so that
Yes.
all of you standing around with your fancy phones, that someone will be able to record the moment you speak your name and your phone number clearly and concisely. And while they didn't understand, they don't ever understand the exercise in the beginning. I mean, we read The Cat in the Hat, and
Mm.
to over enunciate the
Yeah.
words to get those lazy tongues moving, because their fingers are more agile than their tongues.
Yes.
And so then it becomes vitally important that then you become the black, brown, and yellow person in the room. Oh my goodness, you're so articulate. Well, yeah. And that's where I want you to be. And then they know by the end of the class that they've gotten a hug.
Yes.
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 And so it becomes our responsibility to to nurture these students, because my college experience was incredibly nurturing. And I went to a school, Eastern Illinois University, downstate Illinois, one exit on the highway, cornfields and soybean fields, one on the right, one on the left, nothing else in the town but the college. And I live somewhere right like that right now. But but I I say that there were only 400 Black students out of 10,000.
Wow.
And yet I made it my business to foster relationships to be nurtured. So, can you speak to those who may be going to primarily white institutions with a
Mhm.
minuscule number of minority students and help them manage their environment that may be a terse environment?
Certainly. I think one of the things we need to know is that we're not monolithic as Black and brown and yellow people. I would say um, that my experience has been, and I'll speak to Black students for a moment, just by way of example, but this applies to other races and ethnicities too, is that students come with different needs. So
Yeah.
some students come who have only ever been in predominantly white high schools and K through 12 systems.
Hmm.
And so they show up on campus ready to go. Like,
Yeah.
this is not new. And they show up with either one of two attitudes. They show up fully comfortable in a white environment and embracing white friendship and going on, and may get to know a few other students of color, but this is a continuation of their existence and they're fine. Until something happens, and then they seek out the Black Student Union. But then, but then there's those students who've grown up in predominantly white environments, and they say, I want out. Like, okay, I didn't go to an HBCU. I've come to this institution. It seems like it's more of the same. So where are my tribe? And I mean, not just people that are Black, other Black people, or people that look like them per se, but people who have my same attitude and mentality, who care about racial justice, no matter their color, but who care about equity, who care about diversity, who care
Yeah.
about inclusion, who care about social justice. So let me find my tribe. And so really good institutions that are able to serve students of color and white students too, because they're there to learn. Everyone's there to
Yeah.
learn. And part of learning means engaging across lines of difference.
Yes, it
So,
does.
so part of so schools who do it well know that providing environments for students to come together, find individuals who are of like mind, and create and so that they can feel safe, but also create opportunities for them to engage people who are not of like minds, so they can grow their mind and expand and have conversations across lines of difference.
Absolutely, because college proves one thing when you complete, that you have successfully learned how to learn.
Yes. Yes.
Indeed, it is.
Yes.
Dr. Shea, you are a joy. Can you please tell our audience how to be in touch with you?
Certainly. I would love to hear from the audience. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you are, I also write, I blog, I speak. So you can reach me at drshaibutler.com. That's DRSHAIBUTLER, all one word, drshaibutler.com, or drshaibutler@gmail.com.
Blessings to you, and God bless you in your work that you are doing in higher education. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Dr. Brookshire. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. Don't go away. We'll be back with more on Sirius XM Urban View, Channel 126, after this.